head on over to rockabilia.com. It's the coolest place on the internet to get all your officially licensed music merch. That's right, officially licensed. So head on over to rockabilia.com and use the promo code SPIRALOUT to get 10% off your order. Again, rockabilia.com, promo code SPIRALOUT. Rockabilia.com. Thank you for listening. Spiral out. It's kind of the theme. Bayside's kind of like music for breaking up.
You know, you say that, but someone got engaged at the Detroit show.
Oh, really? That's awesome. Your video was sent to me as a shot, and I was like, well, I guess I'm going to ask her to be on it. This is awesome. And you said yes.
Yeah, I mean, it was actually really funny because I don't know, it must have been like less than 24 hours before you sent me a message. I was talking to my friend and was like, I've never been on a podcast before, but I love to talk. Well, I wish someone would ask me to be on their podcast. And then literally within 24 hours, I got your message. I was like, oh, it's meant to be.
That's awesome.
So it felt like I kind of just like, I was like, I'll just say yes. Yeah. Why not?
Yeah, well,
Sometimes someone like telling you can't do something is a great motivator for doing it, you know?
Right. So let me do a quick intro for you. Your name is Bat, right?
Yep.
You are a tattoo artist and a graphic designer, originally from Ireland, and now you live in Michigan.
Yeah, that's the TLDR of it, pretty much.
Right. And you have a ton of stuff that I saw on Instagram. There's not a whole lot about you on the internet that I could find.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's kind of by design. I used to be into more photography in that realm of fine art. And it was genuinely just people telling me, like, oh, you should illustrate more. You should do that. And like getting, doing little graphic design things here and there. And I was like, oh, I don't want it to be me because that's too much pressure. So I kind of made this separate Instagram account for Bat, which has been a childhood nickname my whole life. And so I was like, okay, that's my art stuff. And it kind of helped for me to have it separate.
Sure.
And it kind of just snowballed into me realizing like, no, this is what I want to do. And this is, how I want to share my work and people receive it well and like say nice things about it. So I just, kept going with it. And now I barely even use my, my personal Instagram account. It's like, oh yeah, I have that. I need to go check in on, how that is.
So what was the transition like from being a photographer in that realm of visual art to illustrating? Because I kind of have a similar thing. Like I started in videography and doing podcasts and stuff, and I've been slowly dabbling in the artistic world. So it's kind of an inspiring. Could you draw beforehand?
I mean, it was one of those things where I never thought of myself as an illustrator, but then I looked back through like all my sketchbooks as like a teenager, and I've always been like an artistic person. I've always been a creative person. I remember telling my dad I wanted to be a interior designer when I grew up. So I've always had like, because my dad's an architect, so I was like, oh, I want to do something with houses too, but a different way. So I never thought of myself as like an illustrator or someone who could draw, quote unquote. Like I was like, oh, there are people who can draw really, really well, but you have to be a realism artist to be a good artist. And I think that takes a minute to figure out, at least without the internet, like growing up without like Instagram and all of these like avenues where you can see other artists doing their thing. It took me longer to realize that you can basically do whatever you want and improve through just experimenting, and you will find your style, you will find your subjects that you like to draw and make, and you will get better. Like you will hate the art that you start making. And then, I look back at my progress, even from the past like 2 years, I'm like, wow, like I've really found what I want to do and how I like to do it for now, but that could change. So in retrospect, yes, but it's taken a while to figure out that I have been an artist my whole life.
Do you remember those beginning illustrations? Like, are you doing mainly on pen and pad or digital?
A good, I'd say right now, 50-50. With tattooing, I think I find the most fulfillment in physically drawing a design and spit shading it and painting it, because there's such a huge jump between a digital tattoo drawing and what it could look like on skin. But the paper and skin is a lot closer of a gap just because of the process of making it and you can't undo as easily on paper, and you can undo pretty much at all on skin. So
No.
it helps you kind of like keep that in mind. I do the thing where I'm like drawing on paper and I like double tap with my fingers or like try zoom in. I'm just like, wait, hold on, can't do that.
No.
Um, so there is that cross, but I love mixing both together. It's my iPad changed my life because it really made it accessible. In college, I love to like oil paint
Mhm.
and get really messy. Like, you know, you're in a big studio, you can have like spirits and like all this stuff that you have to ventilate and have a painting drying for like weeks at a time. Less approachable for a lot of people. For me right now, where I live, like I can't just like set up an oil painting room and just, you know,
Get messy.
make a huge mess. Exactly. And so being able to like have something portable where, oh, I have like an hour layover at an airport, or I'm on a train for a few hours, or, you know, I'm waiting for an appointment for 15 minutes, I can just like, you know, grab a notebook, grab an iPad and just, you know, make something, get an idea out there. And that's really fulfilling.
Tattooing. Uh, were you doing that while you were doing photography and whatnot? Um, or
So
did
I
that come
am
after?
new to the tattooing world. I am currently an apprentice at a tattoo shop, and it has been the wildest experience ever because, very similar to graphic design and illustrating, I never thought I would get into tattooing. I always really enjoyed tattooing and I found a lot of inspiration in style. And it took me a while to realize that's what I could do. It was kind of like the possibility was opened up to me. I got tattooed by several really amazing women artists, and just hearing feedback from them and then telling me like, oh no, you should be tattooing, like your art is great and it could translate really well to skin. It took a while, and enough of that I was like, wait, I can do this. And it was really just the most insane and perfect timing where a new shop opened up that is like a queer owned like femme shop with all these amazing artists, and they were like, we're brand new, we're looking for, you know, apprentices, people to come in and work in here and learn from us. And one of the owners, I had been tattooed by them a few times and love their work. And I was like, well, you know, worst they can say is no. So I kind of just, you know, dipped my toes in.
You
And
like rub their shoulders, like, hey, what do
I
you
did, well, I didn't
think?
even say anything at first. I was just like, you know, they had an open art night. I went in, I was hanging out and drawing. And then it was like a whirlwind where all of a sudden I'm sitting down with them and they're like, okay, you want to apprentice here? I'm like, I thought I had to like, you know, this is my 5 year plan. This is like, oh, I'm going to work on a portfolio for a summer and then I'm going to, you know, go around to different shops and, you know, kind of do the struggle and do the uphill battle. And
Nope.
then it kind of just, I feel bad because I feel like I didn't go through like the typical apprentice like hardships, but it kind of just, I don't want to say it got like handed to me, but I feel like there was just like this kismet moment of what I needed and what they needed. And like it was just the right fit. And they were so particular about who they wanted in the shop and the kind of energy and everyone being copacetic. And I don't know, I think it
You
was
fit the
just,
vibe.
I fit the vibe exactly. And they dug my art. And I genuinely couldn't be happier because it is such a fulfilling environment.
Well, it's kind of like the story about the podcast. You kind of manifested it and it came about.
It just
The
happened. Yeah.
other day, you were like, I want to do a podcast. And 24 hours later, I'm like, hey, you want to do a podcast?
Yeah, it's weird. It's like this year especially I really started listening to the people around me more. Like I've always listened to them, but it's as someone who creates something, it's always hard to kind of let people tell you you're doing a good job,
Oh,
right? If
yeah,
someone's
for
like, "Oh,
sure.
I love your podcast," you're like, "Okay, yeah, yeah." Like it's not that you don't value their opinion, it's just your own internal critic is so much louder. And
100%.
pushing that away and being like, "No, no, no. Like let me believe these people, let me trust them, and let me put myself out there and see what happens." And this year has definitely been my goal, and
It's
it's been
working.
working. So
So, not to pigeonhole your style, but from what I've seen, it leans towards traditional, right?
yes, definitely.
Like,
Yeah.
um, how did you find yourself in that realm after oil paintings?
Well, I once I got the apprenticeship at the tattoo shop, which is called Devil's Day, and I don't know the
Okay,
name of it, just it was
it's wicked.
extra appealing because it's like, oh yeah, hell yeah, Devil's tattoo, love it. Um, I started looking back through all my sketchbooks, and I was like, oh, like I've always had inspiration around tattooing, and realized that I had been either inspired by or literally like just like copying trad style tattoos since I was like a teenager, like with a pen and ink, like a dip pen,
Sure.
sitting on my bedroom floor, like redrawing like tattoo styles that I saw. And I think it was just something about like how graphic it is and bold, and the shading I've always really enjoyed. So even if like you go through my Instagram, you see like little phases I went through before I, wanted to tattoo, where I was mimicking trad tattoo styles. So I think it's just always been in the back of my head, as and like most of the tattoos I have are in that style as well. So clearly I have an affinity towards that.
Towards traditional. It's
Yeah,
it,
for
it
sure.
it's kind of like its own. Like I know some guys, real good friends of mine, where they only get traditional tattoos. It's
Mm-hmm.
kind of like its own club, kind of.
Yes. Yeah. And
Um,
it made it kind of intimidating because the thing I like about traditional tattooing that also scares me a bit is there's kind of a definitive way to do it right. So if you're drawing like a trad rose, it's obvious if you shade it badly.
okay.
It's obvious if your line weight changes, that's not good. Like traditional has its rules, and you can break the rules, of course, but then you get into other types of tattooing. So I think it's a great foundation, especially like I might change my style as I go on and as I experiment with tattooing on actual people, but I like a parameter to like judge myself on basically.
Sure. I've also seen with traditional tattooing that like there's a specific, like they like you to use like old style tattooing guns. And do you subscribe to that, like traditional tattooing it as the practice?
I think there's definitely merit to trying it all out. My mentor had me on a coil machine to start out 1,000%. I think it's important to kind of figure out how that works. It's kind of learning the origins of Western tattooing, at least, like machine tattooing, and figuring out you might love it. You might think, oh, I'm just going to buy one of the tattoo pens and cartridges because it's more accessible and easy. And then you miss out on this whole coil machine world that you could love and really get into, because the variation of machines is just so wide. Like you might find like I'm a small person. I'm like 5 feet tall, but I might be, in there with a Dan Cuban hitting really hard
Yeah.
with these thick bold lines. Like you never know, or I might want to go in with like, feathery dainty lines. Who knows? But if you don't try it, then
Then you'll never
you're
know.
just yeah, exactly.
So when did starting to work with bands come about? Because you've worked with quite a few.
Yeah, yeah. It's I don't know. It's again one of those things where you like I look at it now and I'm just like, oh yeah, like the roster is like fleshing itself out. It's definitely a snowball effect. And yeah, it's kind of still pinch me moments every time it happens, because like I get an email and I'm like, oh, me? Really?
Hmm.
Okay,
Oh
sure.
my.
I guess. Are you sure you meant to email me? Okay. It gets easier now that it's like, okay, you saw me from this thing. So I have like, I can piece together where they found me or how they heard of me a little bit better. But I think what it mostly comes down to is music has always inspired my art for as long as I can remember. And I've always incorporated it into my art, even if it's kind of just to bring kind of like a graphic element to it. I've always been a huge lyrics person. I
Okay.
can't sing, I can't play an instrument, but I grew up in a very musical household where music was being played all the time by both of my parents. My siblings all love music, play music. And so I like jumped to lyrics. That was my thing. Like the wordier the band, the better for me.
Oh, Bayside's pretty wordy.
Yeah,
uh,
exactly.
and so
Exactly.
is Taking Back Sunday.
Yeah, yep. Taking Back Sunday, definitely very wordy. And it's like if I can pull from a lyric, and it's very much like the process of I will be driving in my car, or I'll be in the shower, or it'll be like I should have fallen asleep an hour ago, but I was either listening to some music or thought of a song, and a lyric will just like get lodged in my head, and a visual will like work itself up around that. And I either like make a quick note that looks like nonsense in the morning, or like sketch something that looks absolutely insane before I go to bed, or like when I have a second, because it feels like when you have a song stuck in your head, for me, that's the only way I can get it out.
Okay.
And sometimes it's a very literal like interpretation of a lyric. And sometimes it's like, how did that come to this point? Like, how did this lyric make you draw this? I don't know, but it
Can you
just
give me
happened.
two different examples? Like one where it was
Um,
abstract and one where it was super literal?
yeah, I mean, I guess the Taking Back Sunday design that I did, like the lyric was literally, you're a voice I needed out of my head. And
Yeah.
so it was like this skull that was kind of like messed up. And then those lyrics were incorporated inside and outside the skull. And it was just a very literal interpretation of how it would feel to have someone like inside your head in a way that's like messing it up, you know?
It's not fun.
Um, it's not fun. Exactly. It's not fun. And then there was another like literal one is that there's this really great Irish band called Tramp, and they have a lyric where it's like even the eyes of the Virgin Mary wall hanging won't look at me, like talking about like all the shame that they have, like oh even this inanimate object closes its eyes towards me. And I painted like a trad Virgin Mary for that. But then sometimes it's like, oh, I hear a song from like Sweet Pill that's talking about like feelings of, hope, and I want to draw a stag beetle
Okay.
because I don't know. I like weird things. I like symmetrical things. I like gross things, and so bugs are a common occurrence. But
Bugs, flowers,
flowers, teeth, a lot
teeth,
of teeth. Yeah. Birds.
birds.
Yeah. Hands. I draw a lot of hands.
What, tell me about hands. What is it about hands?
I think that I talk a lot with my hands, so I
Okay.
think that may be part of it. And I think they're very gestural. Like I wear a lot of rings on my hands. I I don't know. I feel like they say a lot about a person. And so if I can put them in a piece, it can like if you have hands holding hands, that conveys a message. If you have like fingers crossed, or if you have like a hand that has something written on
Or
it,
like a
or I feel like it's
thumbs
just,
down.
or the thumb is down. It's like you can communicate a lot with hands. And also I think there's just some kind of human aspect in it in that way, which I think sometimes grounds it.
Emotion, right? Being an artist, I'm sure there's art where you can just do it and that's it. But there's also, I'm sure, a ton of art where you're like putting your whole self into it, or you have a specific thought or you know emotion. And can you talk on that? What it's like to like put yourself into a piece?
Yeah, I think it is kind of the plight of the artist because I don't know many artists personally that are just robots and they just create a thing and put it out there and they don't care about it anymore. I have always been a very, very sensitive person. My dad used to say, "Oh, you can just access your emotions very easily." He's very nice about it. He's like, "No, no, no, you're not like a crybaby. You're not oversensitive." He's like, "You can just access your emotions very easily." And I think that's very true because I can be like moved very easily by like a song or a sad story. Like I cry at every movie that has anything slightly sad about it. But in making art, a lot of the time it's so cathartic that I either feel one of two things. I either feel like that emotion has a home now and it doesn't have to like sit in my head or in my chest and like be here, or it exacerbates it, especially if it's like merch or something that's in the world or like a
Oof.
tattoo. I'm like, oh, that's out of my hands now. Like that's everywhere. Like other people can own that. Other people can wear that, have an opinion on it. That's like it's mine, but it's not mine anymore.
Like it's
And
now
it's
it's now the universe's.
it's the universe's, and it's someone trusted me to make something. And it can be something as like cool and like Batwing themed as like the Bayside crow, or it could be something as like silly as a corn dog t-shirt. But like now that's my art and it's out there, and I don't have any say on what people say about it anymore.
Can you think of something that you've done? I've maybe not recently, but at all, where maybe it was painful, or the opposite, super joyful.
Oh yeah. A lot of art that I draw personally, especially recently, has been very like high emotion. I've drawn a lot of art recently about and for my family.
Okay.
And I just got married in September.
Congratulations.
And it was, thank you, it was back home in Ireland. And my husband's American, he's from Michigan. And so all of his family were over in Ireland. A lot of our friends from the US were over in Ireland. And then all of my family and friends were there. And it was just like seeing these worlds come together. And I have like siblings in South America, I have siblings in like Australia. We have a lot of people in my family around the world. And so having everyone in the same place, I think just like it was the happiest week of my life. But then the like the emotional hangover from that was just, oh, I miss everyone so much all the time, more than it is usually.
And how did that translate into the art that you're doing?
I drew a lot of specifically Irish themed stuff. I got really, I mean, it's always there. Like there's always something heritage wise with me at all times. I always wear like a claddagh ring, like my necklace is an Irish coin. I have a lot of care about like the Irish language. I mean, I incorporated it into the Bayside design. It's kind of just this force that
Mm.
drives a lot of my creativity, and having all of that emotion around having my family together and then everyone going back to their respective homes. All of those themes kept coming back. Like you can see it in just the, if you look closely, you're like, oh yep, that's a Trinity knot. Oh yep,
Yeah, I've
that's
seen.
like an Irish fern. And it's everywhere really in my art. And to me, it's kind of an ode to my home and what makes me feel most at home, and like the people who have always supported my art and kind of fostered that mentality. And it's it's weird because I put it out there and someone goes, "Oh, that's cute," and likes it. I'm like, no, this is like a really emotional thing about how like my family, like my siblings were all under the same roof for the first time in our lives, you know. And I don't know if I'll get that moment back again. And here it is, but it's like, oh yeah, but it's pretty.
Half
Yeah, like they
private.
take it as it is,
Yeah.
you know, they take it for how they receive. And someone it might resonate with them more. I kind of see it as, do you ever listen to a song and hear a lyric or hear a song, you're like, oh, I wish I wrote that.
Yeah. All the time.
And you're just like, wow, that's like, if I can make anyone feel that way, even for a second, like, oh, I wish I drew that, like that's incredible, even if it doesn't mean the same thing to them. And I think that's why I draw so much inspired by music and lyrics, is because it's my version of taking control of the like, oh, I wish I wrote that, or I wish I
Mm,
could sing like that. It's like,
that's
oh, but I can
interesting.
make art inspired by it. And I started like incorporating lyrics physically into the designs that I would draw and tagging the artist, not ever for like, oh, I want them to notice me. Like, I hope they like hire me, genuinely because I was like, this is what I'm listening to. This is what inspired this. And I want to credit the source. I want to credit the line that made me want to create this art. And that's a great way to do it.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
And then artists were just like, hey, I like that. Can I buy it? And I was like, wait, okay, yeah, sure, go ahead.
Have you done posters at all yet, or like prints?
Yes, yeah. I don't do as many prints as I should, but large scale posters, I have enjoyed making a few of them. It's cool to like blow your art up larger. Making merch has definitely been like a learning curve. So posters are like the happy medium, because a poster doesn't have to be, unless it's a screen printed poster, it doesn't have to be like vectored and like screen ready. You can get away with a lot more, be a little bit less, be looser with it, be less technical, don't have to sit on Illustrator forever, you know.
What was the first band that asked you to do something for them?
Oh, wow. It would have been when I was in college. I did a very limited shirt design for the band Cayetana for a fest in Florida. Um, and I was like, I don't know how to do this at all. They just like saw a drawing that I did of a skull with heart eyes, and they were like, oh, this is sick. Could you design us a shirt for fest? And I was like, oh, like my motto is say yes and figure it out later.
Yeah, always, right?
It's like I drew this with a Sharpie on my floor in my bedroom. I don't know like how to make this into a file to make into a t-shirt, but I stayed up in the photo lab at school on the PC all night and like figured it out, and then that became a shirt. And I was like, okay, let's see how that goes. And then they sent me a shirt and I was like, okay, I guess
Rad.
I did it.
I'd like to get into the Bayside stuff because they seem to be doing a thing with like multiple artists right now.
Yeah.
They each got a song, if I'm not mistaken.
I think we all had different prompts. I wasn't given a song. I was
Okay.
given more just like a theme, like
Which was the new album, right?
new album and crow. And I
Gotcha.
was like, that's the perfect prompt for me. That's all I need. Thank you.
So did you listen to the entire album?
Yes, whenever I make art inspired by a band, if it's a commission, or for a long time I was doing illustrations for just, everyday people, and they'd give me an album or a song, and I draw like a flash sheet inspired by that song, and that's all I would listen to on repeat. Even if I didn't know the artist very well, I'm like, this is what's gonna inspire the art. So anytime I'm working on a design about a band or for a band, it's that on repeat until it is done, because that's just the mode it's in.
So how, so how long so how long did you listen to that new album?
Oh God. I should probably pull up the stats on this. I mean, I don't know. The album's like
11
not
songs, 12?
super long. It's
Yeah.
like 40 minutes long or something like that. So I don't know. It was a good few listens through though. Because like, there's the sketch round and then finalizing everything. I genuinely I couldn't guess a number, because I do a lot of sketching at the tattoo shop too. So it kind of just like is background noise at one point, which is what I want. I want the music to be so ingrained in my head that I don't even have to like think about it. I just start humming along to it. That's when I know it's like, okay, good.
Which is there a song on that album that stood out when you were creating the crow?
Um, so the funny thing about the album when I started listening to it is that I was kind of hunting for themes, because I had an idea. I was like, okay, they want a crow. That's easy, but like how can I make this tie in? And obviously the title of the album, There Are Worse Things Than Being Alive. Okay, death. That makes it an obvious kind of
Sure.
theme. But then you listen to so much of the album and it's
It's like a
so much
rebirth.
about, yeah, exactly, like death, the reaper, end of life, things that end life. But so much of the album is about living life and like what is happening now, living your life. And that, like I talked about it a bit in the Bayside video, but like the contrast between like, oh, like there are worse things than being alive, but then also being like, okay, but life is a thing and we're doing it now, is like, um I don't know, it's kind of cool.
Yeah.
It's kind of like a fun way to take something for face value and then listen to the lyrics of it, and then it's like, I don't know, this is it. And like the single Go to Hell is a great way for to introduce people to the album, because it's such a statement.
Yeah.
It's like it's what you yell at people, it's what you think about what is going to happen to you because of the choices that you made. So like that one's great, but uh
It was a really hard album for me to listen to.
yeah, really.
Yeah, especially right now.
Yeah, I was
Uh,
gonna say like it's pretty thematically intense,
yeah, because
which
you
is the kind of album I like.
yeah, and again, like you said, the theme is this this kind of come like what happens after the storm, right?
Yeah, yeah, like how
Um,
to ruin everything, and you're just like, yep.
yeah, and again, watching your video of the crow, and now after talking to you and how you throw elements of your personal like culture into there, it's very fun, right? It's very cool. Like it's very you, right?
Yeah, yeah, and I think it always gives me something to work from. Like it might not end up in a final design, but if I have parts of my life and parts of my identity that can inspire me, then I always have something to source from. And Irish mythology and Irish history, it's very rich and very proud.
Did they give you any references on the crow itself, or they were just like, "Do you?"
They just said, "Do you?" They said, "We love your designs." They did send me one of my designs that I did from my Instagram, just like, "Oh, we like this vibe, but just do whatever you want to do." We have a crow on our tour art, so we kind of just want to carry the crow imagery through, but whatever you want. And I sketched up a couple ideas, and they were like, "Let's do that one."
And putting it on a tote bag is pretty awesome, right? Um,
Yeah, it's a
cause
great. I have it. It's a great tote bag. I feel
right,
like I feel lucky because so many bands are like, oh, like we love our merch, but you can't wear your own band's merch. I'm like, I'm gonna wear the stuff I designed though, because it's just band merch. So,
well, I think with tote bags too, it's like I wear my band T-shirts all the time until they're ruined. But
and it's nice because I assume it's the same for you, but I have so many black band t-shirts.
Yeah.
Endless numbers of them. Could wear a different one every day, but it's nice to have something different.
Yeah. Did you get to see them on this tour at all?
I did, yes. I went to the Detroit show
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, it was great. That's where we filmed the video. It was like just right in front of merch. Showed up and they're like, okay, let's do it.
And you said somebody got married there?
Someone got, yeah,
Or
someone got
engaged?
there was a proposal. Yeah.
That's pretty wild.
Yeah, it was crazy. And apparently, I can't remember which show it was at, but another show, maybe it was Dallas. A couple got married and then went straight to the Bayside show. So they had their first dance on stage.
Oh,
They had a
wow.
sign that was like, we just got married. And they were like in their little wedding outfit from the courthouse. And the Bayside were like, okay, let's have your first dance. Let's do it.
Were you a fan of Bayside before they contacted you about the art?
I wasn't like a super fan. They've always been like in the rotation of music that I've listened to. Definitely was a pinch me moment because it's like, oh, wait, that's like a household name in
Yeah.
the genre, And I was kind of really excited because it got me really excited to listen to the new album. And I feel kind of spoiled saying that, but it's like having this really intense motivation to be like, oh my gosh, and this new album's going to come out. And it's like kind of reignites this, oh, I used to listen to them a lot when I was a teenager kind of feeling and getting to revisit that.
What was it like being at the show and seeing people walk around with your tote bag?
Well, my tote bag was sold out. So I didn't get to see people walking around. I know. I was like, wait, really? They had to like save one for me so I could. They restocked after that show, but they're like, I know it's just been like merch has been crazy, so we sold out. We had to like keep one back for so we could film the video. But it will be cool when I see that. Yeah.
Um, well, I'd like to talk about the Taking Back Sunday one now because that
Oh
one was
yeah.
pretty awesome too.
That
Uh,
was yeah.
was it a similar or different experience?
Very similar. Both I was really lucky because the band themselves had input and wanted to like talk about the design, which is my favorite way to work. I know not everyone can do that. People are busy. I mean, everyone was like starting tours and planning tours and Taking Back Sunday. I have like hundreds of shows this year, but knowing that they looked at the designs themselves and said like, "Oh, we like this. Oh, we want to tweak that," was like, what more could you ask for, Um, and how it worked out was really fun too because I drew a few designs and then I thought, oh, what if this one was a long sleeve though? Like that would be kind of cool. And I just kind of added it into the mock-ups for my pitch and I sent it off and they're like, oh, well, we're doing like a quick Europe run before the full US tour. So maybe we'll just do the long sleeve for that. And I was like, okay, yeah, for sure. So the Europe long sleeve version was a surprise and it was really cool because I had a couple friends who were going to the shows anyway. And I was like, okay, if you see it, it didn't hit me that it was real until my friends sent me pictures of the merch table and they're like, there it is, that's you. And I was like, oh yeah, okay.
Did they buy one?
Oh yeah.
Did they buy you one?
um no.
Oh, what? Terrible friends.
I didn't even ask them to. I should have,
You
but
forgot.
I was very overwhelmed by the moment. I'll just steal it off one of them when I visit. It's
Mhm.
fine.
So you talked about how you used to like listen to specific lyrics and then draw things out. Why do you think it's so important to have a visual medium to like an auditory experience?
I am a very visual person. I'm a very visual learner. If someone is talking through the rules of a game, like if we're playing a board game and you're just telling me the rules from a piece of paper, I can grasp it. But like once I start playing it, okay, got it, easy. I've always connected with things by seeing it way quicker and way faster. And I think that has always drawn me to make a visual thing. Uh, like even with how I communicate with people, if you look through a text conversation with me, I will send like a dozen photos to a friend in a day because if I see something like I want to share it, or if like an anecdote I'm talking about has a visual reference, I'm going to send it. Like there are people who will never send a screenshot or a picture in a text conversation. I am the complete opposite. I am emojis, I am pictures, I'm screenshots. I'm like, look at this thing. I'm sorry I'm sending you like 60 attachments right now, but I want to show the story and kind of like lay it out. And Yeah, I mean, once I realized that was like the kind of person I was, I'm like, oh, that's why I like visual art, because it's taking a feeling that you have or a feeling that you felt when you listen to a lyric and making it into a different form for someone else to kind of consume and maybe feel it in a way that they wouldn't if they just heard it, or if they just, heard the music being played, and maybe they wouldn't have listened to the song, but they're like, oh, that's cool art. Maybe I'll listen to the song. Who knows? Like, people connect through art in so many different ways that if I feel like this is a way for me to connect through art, there has to be someone else out there who feels the same way.
100%. And do you think you get like people have a more reaction to tattoos on themselves, or maybe seeing their favorite, bands merch, like your art on their merch? Because it's two very
But
personal things, right?
they are two very personal things. And to me, it's always weird when, not weird, but it's a weird feeling when someone wants my art tattooed on them, because I'm like, this is forever, right? I feel like I turn into a grandma where I'm like, tattoos are permanent, right? This is gonna be on your body unless you pay a lot of money to laser it off. And you can take a t-shirt off,
This is
you
true.
know? So both are very unique feelings. They're very personal. I feel like having my art on band merch it's such a unique, cool thing, because it's having my art seen by other artists, musicians, and saying, I want that to represent what we do. And especially when the artist has opinions on it and has given feedback specifically, it's like, oh, you trust me and you trust my art enough to represent the art that you're putting in the world in a way that is pretty important. Like, merchandise is a crazy world for musicians. I mean,
Yeah.
in terms of making money and getting their bands out there and having visuals to represent, it's a big thing to trust someone with. And it's also really cool just to have your art on wearable, something that people can like throw in the wash and then, have 20 years down the line and have it look really distressed and cool. Be like, oh yeah, this is the Bayside shirt I got 20 years ago. Batwing Designs made it.
I know you've touched on the Bayside design already, but after hearing what you just said, I'd really like to elaborate on what you would like, how you think the crow art represents the band, like how you feel, not maybe how they
Mm-hmm.
asked, but how you feel.
I think it definitely goes back to you saying like Bayside are a very wordy band. Like, their lyrics are very full. Like, there's a lot going. If you take a song down and you read the lyric sheet, it's not like a cute little punk song where it's like, six
Mm.
lines. It's a full thought out kind of world almost. And having an animal that just visually, has a lot of feathers, a lot going on, like takes up space, like the wingspan, all of that, and then incorporating Irish mythology into it definitely feeds into Bayside's wordiness and kind of richness in story. If you listen to an album, like, they're painting a whole picture of what they want you to think about, what messages and emotions they're trying to convey. It might just, like, you can look at it and be like, oh, that's just a cool crow. But then the more you look at it, the more story there is behind it, the more detail there is to it. And there's kind of this, like, weird witchiness to it. There's this darker undertone to it that you can take it for what it is on surface value, or you can kind of get down to the grit a bit more.
There's some magic in there, I think what you're
There's
saying.
exactly, there's some magic in there for sure.
Um, Final question. I kind of touched on this before, but it seems like Bayside in general, again, are, in my opinion, these very heartfelt breakup songs. Have you ever done art specifically for a breakup?
I mean, definitely yes. When I was younger, I mean, I have to think, because my husband and I, we've been together for like 11 years now,
Oh yeah.
so I have to go back in time a bit. But yeah, absolutely. I think that's what drove a lot of my like angsty oil painting when I was in
Uh,
college, for
sure.
sure. Very cathartic process, like actually doing the painting. Uh, but I did have like an emo poetry phase as
Oh
well, and
wow.
I think that's where the majority of my like heartbreak came out. And I was definitely like the person who would write these really bad emo poems about situations that never even happened. I'm like 15 years old talking about like whiskey and cigarettes and breakups and blah 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 blah. I'm like, what are you talking about?
You kind of touched on this before about leaving the emotion in the art, and then it leaves. And I see how that might work for the person making it. But how do you think art in general helps the observer maybe get through some of these, good and tough emotions?
I think breakups at the core are a situation of grief.
Mm-hmm.
I think you can mourn and you can grieve a person and a situation, even if they're not, if they're still alive. It's acknowledging the end of something or trying to acknowledge the end of something. And I think grief is usually a very lonely feeling.
Hmm.
It's a very isolating feeling. No one feels grief the way you feel it. And it feels embarrassing to share it if it's a relationship or if it's an actual death or if it's a pet death or any form of grief. There's some kind of weird embarrassment to it. It's like, oh, and there's also like anger of like, how are all these people just going on with their lives? How are all my friends just laughing and sending memes when I'm feeling this feeling right now? No one understands it. And I don't want anyone to understand it because they never will.
Sure.
But I think a lot of my solace in any feelings of grief have definitely been found through music. I am the kind of person where if I'm feeling sad, I don't want to listen to a happy song. That it feels almost mocking to
Yeah.
me. It's like, oh, I'm all happy. This is a happy song. And you're like, no, I'm gonna cry more now. This isn't helping.
What's your go-to song for when you're sad?
Anything from Manchester Orchestra's first album for
Okay.
sure. Yeah, Collie Strings is my just cried out, feel the feelings. I have a whole playlist called "Songs to Lie Awake and Stare at Your Ceiling to" that I made in college, and I've maybe added a couple songs to it, but it is just like if you just need to stare at the ceiling and just when you just let tears fall, you're like not even crying anymore. You're just like this is I'm just mushed right now.
What about the opposite? What's your
Oh,
go-to when you're like joyful?
feeling it. Yeah. The album Happiness Hours by the Sidekicks
Okay.
is my, I call it my sunroof song, my sunroof album. To me, sunroof songs are like, I have a whole playlist of them. It's just music you want to listen to with like the windows down, the sunroof open, just you want to drive for hours because you're like, this is the peak of living right now. Like the weather is perfect, the sun is shining. I am in a great mood. I just want to listen to, and it's not even music about being happy. It's just music with like the right energy.
What was that one again?
And the album,
Yeah,
Happiness Hours by the Sidekicks.
I'm gonna look it up.
It is, I think, one of my favorite albums ever. That and Runners in a Nerved World, which is their album before that. Both albums, no skips, put them on, drive as long as I can, and like scream, sing along to them, even though I'm tone deaf. I have to like,
Me too.
I'm,
It
I
doesn't
have to
stop me.
sing, I have to sing to any lyric I know. I have to sing along to it.
Same. It's like a
Yeah,
compulsion.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Um, you've obviously always been an artist, even though you may not always have realized it. But realizing it and then following that, right? I would ask, do you have advice for any, not just artists, but anybody who's trying to step into, themselves, right?
Uh, it sounds cliche, but just try it. Just go for it and keep at it, even if it doesn't click the first time, or if you're putting yourself out there and nothing is working in your head. You never know what someone's going to see and what's going to resonate with someone else. And people are kinder than you think.
Agreed,
That's been
100%.
huge for me. Reaching out to artists and people whose art I admire, reaching out to even artists outside my medium and just asking them for advice or, oh, hey, like, what did you do to do that thing? Like, the majority of the time, people are going to be nice about it. If someone comes to me and they're like, hey, what do you use to draw? I'm not going to gatekeep. I'm not going to keep a secret. I'm not going to make it seem like this big, elaborate illusion. I'm just going to share and give the advice that I can give in the best way I can because we're not in competition with each other. That would be crazy. There's so many people on this planet.
Yeah, that's what I think people forget is there's plenty of room for everything, right?
Oh, and it's crazy how much there is out there
Yeah.
for that people want to buy and people want to make into merch. Like, I mean, Bayside's merch spread alone on this tour had so so much art in it and so many artists featured. It's like there's room for all of us, I promise. And the bigger your community and the more people that you help and the more people that you reach out to and just talk to, the bigger your web builds. And I mean, I refer people for projects all the time because I'm like, that's not in my scope, but I know someone who would thrive doing that. And I love doing that because I don't want to draw something that I would struggle doing, or a project where I'm like, this would be like pulling teeth.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to do that. But if I can give it to someone
Who would
who
enjoy it?
would love to do it, then like that's kind of the whole point, you know. And my in the art world, it can be very like tense sometimes, especially in the fine art world, which I left, which is why I quit photography. The fine art world was not for me. But working in freelance, I think just doing the best job that you can do, putting yourself out there, and genuinely being the nicest person you can in spite is my like how I go about everything. Because if you're genuine and you're authentic and you're just a nice person in a genuine way, don't be a pushover. Don't, be nice to people in hopes of getting places. Just be a nice person because that's who you are. And people will see that. Like people want to work with people because
They're real,
they're they're real and cool and want to have a conversation with them. Like there are many people who can draw way better than I can. Um,
but they might be dicks.
exactly. Like I don't want to be a dick. I'm not a dick. I want to be a person that I want to put out the vibes and the energy and the kindness that I want to receive. And I think that goes way farther than people think.
Hmm. One band you haven't worked with that you would like to?
Oh, Manchester Orchestra would be a dream, 1,000%.
Have you reached out to them yet?
No, not yet.
I feel like this
I
is your
should.
time.
I think it is my time. Um, an artist who was on the Bayside run, Karen Cunningham.
Yeah.
She did a shirt for Bayside and she did a shirt for Taking Back Sunday as well. So I was like, wait, we have merch next to each other on 2 tours. This is crazy because I've loved her art for a long time. The designs she did for Manchester Orchestra are some of my favorites ever, and that's how I found her, was through those designs that I saw, and I was just like, these are great designs. And so it was cool seeing like, oh, like we're in the same world now, and so it
Yeah,
doesn't feel as crazy anymore. So I feel like I need to shoot my shot and see how it
definitely.
goes.
I feel like you've been manifesting things, pretty clearly. So why not?
Worst they can say is no.
Agreed. And I feel like they wouldn't, right? You're already in the mix.
I'll let you know. But the thing is, if an artist ever says no to a design, that doesn't mean the design is dead.
No.
Like I have a catalog, I put it away. I'm like, okay, future designs.
Well, I think those are all my questions. I really appreciate you coming on the show. This was
Thank you for
super
having
fun.
me.
Yeah, no, this was awesome. Um, and again, manifestation is crazy, right? Like
Yeah, it's
it's a powerful thing. Like just again, having a positive attitude and you know doing things from a genuine place and not necessarily not having expectations, but just being you, like can go a long way if you're trying.
yeah, yeah. And I wouldn't say I have a healthy work-life balance. I definitely overwork myself a lot of the
Same.
time, but it's a lot of it is passion driven. Like it doesn't feel like I'm working. I'll, shut my computer down. It'll be midnight and I'll get up at 6 the next day, work all day, all night, and I don't feel tired. I just feel, I'll go to the tattoo shop and then I'll come home and I just like, I feel immensely fulfilled because I'm so lucky to be doing what I love to do. And I know 15-year-old me would kick my ass if she saw me slacking, not working to make my dreams come true. It's like, come on, you can do this. So
Right?
I do it for, I mean, that's the thing too. Like if I look at the roster of clients that I've had and I were to send that to 15-year-old me, she would lose her mind. So I feel this could be it for the rest of the year and nothing else crazy could happen. And teenage me would be so proud of me. And that's enough. That's enough for me.
Well, do me a favor. Give yourself a plug. Tell people where they can find your art and if they would like to get a tattoo by you if they're in the Michigan area?
Yeah, for sure. You can find my art on my website, batwingdesigns.com, or my Instagram, batwing_designs. And I am working out of Devil's Day Tattoo in Lansing, Michigan. We're a queer-owned tattoo shop next to a really nice coffee shop too. So, you can get yourself a nice vegan donut before you come get a tattoo. And yeah, watch out for me on, different merch stands popping up. I'm
Can
sure I'll be
right.
on more.
So yeah, if you're listening and you're interested in at Batwing Designs on Instagram, you can pretty much find all your stuff, right?
Yep.
Can you do me one last favor?
Yes.
Can you tell Rebecca thank you for getting us uh, in touch?
Rebecca, thank you so much. This never would have happened without you.
Right? I really appreciate you coming on the show, and I wish you nothing but success and joy.
Thank you so much. This has been so great.
Yeah, first podcast you've done, right?
Yeah, first podcast.
How'd it go? Now that we're done,
Great.
right? It was super fun and insightful. Hello, Spiral Out Podcast listeners. Big news for the podcast. Big news. This podcast has got its first official sponsor. Yes, somebody sponsored this podcast. Drum roll, please. Head on over to rockabilia.com. It's the coolest place on the internet to get all your officially licensed music merch. That's right, officially licensed. You can get Tool shirts. You could get a Perfect Circle hoodie, a Deftone shirt. You could get a Metallica towel. You could get a Sleep Token sculpture, 9 Inch Nails pins. You can turn your whole house into a music museum. So head on over to rockabilia.com and use the promo code SPIRALOUT to get 10% off your order. Again, rockabilia.com, promo code SPIRALOUT. The podcast is honored to partner with Rockabilia. We're excited for the future. We are excited about new episodes, and it just kind of tickles my fancy. So again, rockabilia.com, promo code SPIRALOUT to get your Metallica t-shirt or your Tool shirt or a AC/DC towel or a Beatles blanket. They have a ton of cool stuff. I bought a Deftones poster the other day. And again, official tour poster. So rockabilia.com. Thank you for listening. Spiral out.